one and all present here. I, Takshama Maheshwari, on behalf of Legal File, welcome you all in this prestigious panel discussion where today we are celebrating the 75th Independence Day. Firstly, we wish you all a very happy Independence Day. In honor of India's 75th year of independence, we at Legal File want to raise awareness and get a better understanding of how the laws have grown since independence, as well as the significant developments that have occurred in our legal system over the last 7 decades. We are thankful to all the panelists for joining us today in this auspicious occasion. So, our first panelist is Mr. Swarnendu Chatterjee. He graduated from KIIT University, Bhubaneswar. He was the managing associate at Luthra and Luthra, and now he is managing associate at Saraf and Partners. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time for this session.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction.
Now, our next panelist is Mr. Siddharth Sirodia. He graduated from Amity Law School in 2015. In 2017, he joined the Central European University, Budapest, to pursue a master's in comparative constitutional law with a merit-based scholarship. He has been practicing as an independent counsel before the Supreme Court of India and the High Court of Madhya Pradesh, where he represents clients in constitutional, commercial, and criminal cases. Besides practicing law, Siddharth sir teaches constitutional law at Amity Law School, Gwalior, as an adjacent faculty. Thank you, sir, for sparing your time for this session.
Thank you.
Now, our next panelist is Mr. Tanmay Agarwal. He is an assistant professor of law at Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal, and is pursuing PhD in Artificial Intelligence and Regulatory Framework in India. He completed BBA LLB from National Law University, Odisha, and LLM from Gujarat National Law University, Gandhinagar. He had been a youth legal advisor and Indian delegate at conferences working on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and had been an awardee at World Youth Summit. He had been conducting research and training sessions of SCC Online for law students. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thanks a lot to the whole team and Damini ma'am.
For the past more than 4 years, Mr. Devesh Saxena is primarily practicing at Allahabad High Court along with other tribunals at Allahabad such as NCLT, CAT, DRT, and DRAT. And he has been handling and he has argued cases of multifarious nature such as banking, real estate, insolvency, corporate, etc. His journey started from practicing at Allahabad, but recently he has also been representing clients at Delhi NCR and Lucknow. His services also include providing legal consultation to startups and other budding companies, wherein he provides them with services such as corporate legal drafting, due diligence, corporate compliances. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm looking forward for it.
Now, lastly, we have Ms. Nupur Agarwal, graduated from JLC Mumbai. She has worked with Trilegal and she is currently pursuing LLM from Jindal Global Law School. She is also the content head at Bettering Results. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation for this event.
Thank you, Legal File and Damini for the invitation. I hope I do justice to this also.
Now, I would like Damini to take up the session further.
Thank you so much, Takshima, and good evening, everyone. So this is Saturday, so I won't take you much time, but yes, I'll just tell you people a few things that each panelist will be getting 3 to 4 minutes to answer the question. And after that, you can take as many as follow-ups you want. You can agree, disagree to the other panels as well. So I think we should start up this session. So the first question is for Advocate Swarnendu. So, sir, do you believe that the judicial system has grown more accessible to the public within these span of 75 years, or the situation remains dire till now?
The judicial system over the past 75 years definitely has developed a bit, but accessibility of the judicial system remains to be remains to be a question to be asked, because many sections of the society are not financially sound or not that sound enough to challenge the same at the higher before the higher courts of justice. And also you see the pending vacancy with the vacancies at different high courts. So the judicial system, the judicial system and the justice delivery system is suffering. We are doing it. We are seeing it we are seeing it day in and day out, that before that the appointments are not taking place, and the judicial and the justice delivery system is also suffering. And secondly, the whatever we are seeing today in the power, whatever we have seen, we have definitely transformed ourselves from what we were in 1949, 1950 to whatever we are at this juncture in 2021. But I feel with a robust judicial system and with a more transparent judicial appointment system, apart from in addition to what we have right now, and the promptness of the executive to appoint judges at the earliest, would see a better justice delivery system. And also, I would like to point out at this juncture of on the eve of independence, is that there are certain sections of the society which still suffer from the from the ills of injustice. And legal aid legal aid service, although prevalent in all the major cities of India and the districts of India, may not be sufficient for these poor people. So it is time for all the lawyers who are in the major cities to have to like to have an access to make themselves accessible to these poor people, poor section of the society, apart from the rich, and further make the justice delivery system quicker, faster, and more efficient than before.
Thank you so much for your response, sir. That has been recorded. So any other panelist would like to take the lead or would like to add on something to this?
You know what?
Yeah. Okay, Nupur,
sorry.
you go first. Okay.
Thanks. So, you know what? I will totally agree with sir, because I came across an incident where, my servants who work with at my place, they came up and they were like, Didi, nahi mil raha hai, we're not getting the appointments to the court, or can you see the case? Even it was real estate related, it was a small matter, but they were all like, we can't get through it. And then I think, which I'm sure they didn't get anything. And also adding to this, the prices of even getting a stamp paper or getting something notarized is so high that by the time you reach the court of law for anything, the price which you pay for that is so high that the general public do not want to go for it. They'll be like, leave it. Why should I pay something? It's just like the compensation, the price which they actually pay for getting the justice is higher than what price they actually want to get, or the justice they want to get. So, this is, even if it is grown, I wouldn't disagree that it's grown a lot, but accessibility is still a thing which is not in the picture today.
Okay, so who want to go next?
All right, yeah, I'll just add some more points to it. Fine. So first of all, sir has taken up this particular issue very well. But I'll just say this point that while the accessibility of law is definitely into question, it mainly depends upon the individual on how the legal knowledge, how much legal knowledge does that person has, or if not. Just even as Nupur ma'am had mentioned with regard to the cost benefit analysis, and the cost that might be trivial for the court might be everything for the particular petitioner who has went to the court of law seeking justice for his particular matter, may that be a land case, may that be anything else. So accessibility is definitely a question even in this 21st century where we are, and talking about even after 75 years of justice, that still is into question, and we should be doing a lot with regard to it. For example, let's say ADR mechanisms have also been put up, but with regard to, once again, getting it to the common man on how a particular person can know that he also has such mechanisms for dispute or resolution unless and until the court tells them. So that is something that I wanted to add on. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there any other panelist who would like to add on?
I would
I
like-
would. Can I go?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So I would just like, I think what Sunendu sir said was actually very correct when you look at how India has transpired all throughout these 17 years, 75 years. And we have seen that there have been a lot of amendment in the constitution because our preamble goes with the idea of social, economic and political justice for everyone. And we have had many cases. We have had many cases in constitutional law where we have seen how courts have determined legal aid or access to justice is one of the basic features of rule of law. And then we have had 39A, which provides for definitive legal aid to the people who need it, like the poor people in the society. But in addition to this, we also see that where the system has also failed to make a difference to the society. For example, if you look at Indian Constitution, we were not citizens as such before the independence. We were subjects of Britishers, and then we were subject of a small princely state. So we use this document to transform the class of a citizen, of a class of a subject into citizens, and we wanted to use constitution as a mechanism for that transition of subjects into citizens. So I think one of the essential things that could have been done was development of judicial standards while reviewing constitutional challenges, that every challenge could have been done on the basis of whether it advances society in a manner our constitution envisioned. That was some of the judicial acceptability or some of the judicial standards that could have been developed. And secondly, look at how legal aid has become also a mechanism. Like I would tell you one of my own experiences, that once I was in Tisazari court in Delhi, and there was this old lady who couldn't find an advocate, and somebody told her to go to a legal aid committee, but she was not willing to, because even there she was asked a huge amount to be paid for paperwork. So then a lawyer advised her to go to the court and then ask the court to appoint an amicus for her, because that would be much better than having a legal aid person. So we have also failed to provide good remuneration to the lawyers who would willfully join legal aid services for the only intention for which it was created, like to help people. Because recently we had Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramana, say that we have the largest population of people who require legal aid. So I think one thing that should be done is to increase the remuneration of lawyers who would do legal aid willfully. Secondly, something that would be important, I feel, is that this is only with regard to the constitutional adjudication, but look at how people who are going for their civil disputes to be adjudicated in the courts, they have failed to get adequate relief from the court, because most of the time they're referred to mediation and then they don't know how the court proceeds. So I think even when we are sending individuals to mediation, then we should make sure that mediation result into something which would become acceptable. Like the Delhi High Court last year, or I think 2 years back, introduced the changes to the rules in the Delhi High Court practice rules, where they said that, okay, if you are offered a amount before you can, if you like, Delhi High Court introduced something where actually you provided for settlement of the dispute and you put a burden on the individual to accept it or reject it. But in the case final adjudication is in favor of one person, then the other person has to bear the entire cost. So basically we need to make it more accessible. That is what I wanted to point.
Thank you so much, sir. So I think the next question is for Mr. Devesh. As to several initiatives for women's emancipation were launched after independence, but the most notable ones were actually concerned with the constitutional issues in women's social policies. So would you like to throw some lights on your thoughts regarding the women's rights post-independence era?
I believe the position of women in India there has been a drastic change. If we see the position pre-independence and what we see nowadays. Earlier, there used to be so much women, where women used to fight for their rights. Even during the pre-independence part, there were certain illustrious ladies who used to represent women in a very in a very great way, but the major chunk of population was only suffering. So what change it drew after independence was that some laws which came into existence, like Sexual Harassment Act, like Dowry Prohibition Act, these acts somehow curtailed, these acts somehow provided and recognized the rights and for the women, and they also lay down a foundation where women can always fight for their rights, be it sexual harassment at their workplaces, be it termination of their pregnancy at a particular time, and also complaining for the dowry which is being sought for them, and also they are not just being seen as the subordinate to the male population. They came out and then they participated equally, shoulder to shoulder, to our our society, in our society, and they are no more treated as just votes or something like that. Now they have their equal existence, but at the same time, I also feel that there has to be a lot of there's a lot of requirement to make them realize that yes, they are safe in this country. They have equal right to participate in everything as what males do, and also there is equal there's a need to ensure that they somehow don't feel short of what they are getting. So at the end, it always boils down to the fact that we have reached to a level where we have recognized the women's right. We have gave them so much of opportunity so that they can excel to a level, but still the females, the women of rural areas, they somehow don't have those opportunities. The all the legal system remains in the urban areas, the cities, and still the rural areas somehow lack in ensuring the equality to the half of the population which we have. So, and that can only improve if we place these women in the top hierarchy. For example, I recently observed that in our judiciary there are so many male judges, but we lack what we lack in our equal number, at least not equal, but somehow participation should be such that it should be significant. In my high court, in Allahabad High Court, it is a very shameful fact which I am giving to you, that there has been only still senior advocate who is women. Until independence till now, there is none other single female senior advocate, and this is a very horrible fact. This is which I am giving it to you. So when women will find place in the parliament, when women find place in the judiciary, when they will be given the top positions, then only female rights will be recognized, and then only we can say that okay, fine, now we see a better situation, better opportunity for females. So we have already come out so far from our independence, the 75th year which we are celebrating since independence, and we talk about equality, but yet the dream is so far to be fetched and so far to be recognized. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, sir. Your response has been recorded. So the next question is for Advocate Swarnendu. As to there have been many important aspects that actually reinforce the current constitutional framework. But would you like to highlight some important aspects that reinforces the same?
Yeah, there are several. There have been several constitutional amendments which have been progressive towards the advancement of the goal. One is like introduction of goods and service taxes through 246A, the amendment of 246A. Thereafter, thereafter a major constitutional amendment, although it is although a far better job can be done, that is introduction of Schedule 10. Now we realize how big and how important Schedule 10 is. The 10th schedule is coming into play more often than not in today's context, when horse trading is at the epitome and it is at the prime. In every other election, be it state or central, we find the element of horse trading, and the doors of the Supreme Court are being knocked at midnight. This and also time has also come to enforce a law, which Justice Nariman did in the Manipur Assembly case, that the speakers should decide on a disqualification application within a time-bound manner. It is ripe for such amendment to be done. And the second and the third and the fourth scenario which I would talk about is there should be a constitutional amendment with there are substantial constitutional amendments, and recognize it is time for a constitutional amendment to that fact that the Election Commission should be given power to de-recognize political parties which are somewhat there in the Election Commission symbols order, but recently the Supreme Court was deliberating on it. There are divergent views, and that it should be reinforced to that. And the framers' dream, which should be reinforced and which should be countenanced, is doing away with the ills of reservation. You see, Baba Saheb Ambedkar's dream in the last speech before the Constituent Assembly. He says that caste and the caste system and the segregation in the basis of caste is an ill which needs to be which needs to be eradicated, and reservation on the basis of caste needs to go. But still, we find even after Supreme Court striking down certain amendments, it has been reimposed and it has been passed again. So you see, ultimately, there are certain amendments which go back and forth, and certain judgments which are in the favor of the citizens of the country. But you see, Constitution being being a progressive document to that extent has helped us to face many such constitutional challenges, and we can certainly hope that we can overcome those hurdles very soon.
Thank you so much for your response, sir. So the next question is for Mr. Tanmay, as to while drafting the constitution, the framers had, particular intention, particular idea behind that provision while drafting such provisions. So do you think that those provisions have been carried forward in these 75 years, or did we not really care about it?
All right. So if you actually talk about the legislative intent of the constitutional framers, I believe a lot of it has been carried forward because of the very clear guidelines and, of course, the clear black and white text. And specifically, since we were discussing about the constitutional amendments, and we had amendment number 42 and amendment number 44 that actually changed quite a lot, right? So talking in regard of to that amendment, that let's say amendment 44, which had actually enhanced or brought back the life into it, was actually getting back the position with regard to giving the powers back rightfully, and inherently most of those provisions and all of those articles of the Constitution have been very well followed, and even there have been various other acts that have been incorporated, may that be with regard to the harassment at workplace and many other add-on acts that have been formulated to actually implement what the Constitution was trying to have in the legislative intent. So there were n number of ways to keep it intact and see that it is followed.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Nupur.
You know what, Damini, I'll agree with Tanmay sir, but there's one thing which I would like to point out, that even though the ideologies are taken care of now, but I just feel like now we should make amendments, or even if we have those ideologies working still now, I don't think so carrying it forward is a good idea, because now the ideology of people themselves is changing, and people are getting to know more about law, or for that matter, all the changes. So I think the ideologies which were there, the ideas for which the laws were made are very good, but there needs to be amendment which needs to be taken care of, and make changes to those itself rather than carrying all that forward also that way.
So I would request Siddharth sir to follow up with this, like the same question to the legislative intent behind those provisions and whether they have been carried forward till now or not.
I think to many respect it has been, and at many, like if you read Austin's take on Indian Constitution and how it has not prevented the constitutional ideals to be achieved. So I think there are many things where you can say that, okay, the Constitution has ultimately achieved what it desired, because now we see that status of the people has in many respects have been appreciated in many respects, but still there is a lot of time that will take for over change to happen. But I would like to say that I think Swarendu sir mentioned something very interesting about an amendment concerning election commission having the power to regulate political bodies. In addition to that, also containing a power to ban political parties. So that actually exists in Germany, and it exists in many other European nations. And this is a principle which is recognized as a concept of militant democracy. So where militant democracy basically means using democratic means to achieve non-democratic acts. So for example, in Germany in 1956, this concept was first used to abolish and ban a socialist party that actually operated on Nazis party's ideals. So this was something which they recognized as a militant democracy, and something that I really like about this constitutional German constitution is the recognition of political parties as a constitutional body. So I think in India, it is the utmost responsibility of the political parties to achieve the ideals that it is supposed to do. I think we should also enhance the status of political parties to be constitutional bodies so that they are under more check, because these days we see a lot of debate concerning the status of political parties where they hide behind the cloak that they're not in the government. But I think to bring more transparency, we should also make an amendment where we introduce changes to the constitution like that.
Thank you, Siddharth sir. So is there anyone who would like to take the follow-up?
Damini, I'll again add that even though there has been many changes and the ideologies are being carried forward, I feel that now the same ideologies cannot be carried forward, because the people are changing, the individual's mindset are changing, the situation of the country is changing, and in fact, now people want more laws which is, according to today's ideology rather than which was thought way earlier. So in order to carry forward that, we should change it's good that the ideologies are being followed and it's being implemented, but now the ideology should change.
Thanks, Nupur. So I think I would ask the next question to Mr. Devesh as to within these 75 years of independence, many amendments actually took place. So which amendment in particular you would like to highlight that have actually strengthened the current framework, or which one is your favorite?
So this is a very tricky question, but I'll go back to the 42nd and the 44th Amendment, which actually laid down the shape of the Constitution, how we perceive today, and the case laws revolving around those amendments, especially the Keshav Bharti case, which actually interpreted the preamble which we see today. So amendments basically, are introduced to change the constitution and to reshape according to the present day needs. They basically formulate what we require in the present day scenario because Constitution is our Magna Carta, and it has to be the soul and the root of what the entire legal system revolves around. So I believe when after the 42nd amendment, the three terms were introduced in the Constitution, which actually reshaped it to what we see today. Uh, Somehow, people started, when the word secular was introduced, the people started, and the word socialist was introduced. The people started thinking that this might be, kind of altering with what the root and what the soul of Constitution which we have. But slowly and gradually, people realize that no, this should be introduced in the Constitution and the preamble, because ultimately we need such type of system where we are talking about the social policies, keeping in mind the um, equal participation and opportunities for everybody. So, and soon after that, the Indira Gandhi government tried to, surpass that amendment by passing another amendment, which is the 44th amendment, which we have. And from there, the situation somehow changed, led to the judicial reviews and certain conflicts within the judiciary and the parliament, which where the Supreme Court played a major role, and that's how we see the Constitution as we perceive it today. So apart from that, I think the 24th Amendment was also a significant amendment. And my favorite, I never followed, to be very honest, I never followed the amendments that closely. But I feel, as Mr. Swanendu also pointed out, that we still need some amendments in the Constitution, which can, lay down certain requirement for people, so as to introduce them certain safeguards as well as certain risks, which can lead, uh, which can actually lead to a situation where people feel an active part of the legal framework. For example, we see fundamental duties in the Constitution, but they cannot be enforced. And the as and the same way the DPSPs, they also cannot be enforced. So I think there has to be a requirement where the state needs to be made more accountable in situations where the state just tries to flee away by not providing their citizens, and by not letting the citizen enforce their rights. And in the same way, we need a very election commission in a very independent manner, and we also need to ensure that the election commission is an independent body, because these days we see a lot of allegation being leveled against the election commission, which is, although it is an independent body, but we see a lot of allegation being leveled against the independence of the election commission. In the same way, you see judiciary, we always have this thought in the court, in the balconies of the courts, that we can't just let the judiciary in the hands of government, or we can't let the judiciary being a pro government or being anti government. So that has to change. We need to just ensure that we have certain amendments where the policies of the constitutions are being enforced and they are being recognized in a better manner.
Thank you so much, sir. So I think we are done with the questions, the basic questions.
Damini, I'll just add
yes,
one
sir, please,
thing.
sir. Please, sir.
I just need 1 second. If you speak about my favorite amendment, which is close to the heart, which is very close, is the 69th Amendment. It's the 69th Amendment whereby, like, since I'm a resident of Delhi NCR, Delhi was given a status, or a special status, which you say a 239 AA, whereby Delhi became a democratic, like a essence of democracy was breathed into Delhi's air. But now somehow with the amendments and somehow with the post amendments and the growing tendencies to overcome judgments of the court by introducing amendments must be stopped and must be severely deprecated. Democracy is the basic essence of, on the eve of the independence, we must remember that if there is no democracy, when there is no constitutionalism, we become an autocratic state with absolutely nothing on our hands.
Thank you, sir. Siddharth, sir, would you like to mention your favorite amendment so far?
I think for me, my favorite amendment would be 26th Amendment. Because I have always wondered that why would we recognize the idea of privy pursing being given to someone in a nation which is free. So I think abolition of privy purses, like the practice that we have developed in exchange of independence and princely states coming to India. So I think that did not actually reflect the idea of real independence, because look at the French Revolution, the idea of independence have been independence from the shackles that put bars on an individual to exercise the freedom that he's entitled to as being a free citizen. So I think the 26th Amendment that actually disallowed and declared privy purses as unconstitutional was the real moment for India to actually look and tell people that they're not subjects anymore of the princely states or the rulers. So I think for me, abolition of privy purses was one of the important landmark amendment.
Okay. So thank you so much for a response. Is there any other panelists who would just like to highlight or mention their favorite amendments so far? Okay, Noor, please. We have less time, so please.
No, I won't describe because Devesh sir has already done that, but my favorite is also the one where we had a constitutional change where the constitution added the word secular to our constitution. That still remains my favorite amendment to the constitution.
Okay. So is there any other one? Tanmay, would you like to just quickly mention your favorite amendment so far?
Of course, that terminology favorite amendment is something very distinguished, and I appreciate you for that. It's just that all of the law students and being a faculty of law, we always have given such importance to 42 and 44 because of the fact that they had a lot of things to take back and to give back. Yeah. So because of the Indira Gandhi government and all of those interesting things, so called. So there was a lot of thing that was added on by the 42nd Amendment. Then like legitimate powers were given back by the 44th. So both of them would actually deserve that particular spot instead of one. So I would say 42 and 44 because of that interesting story, and then additions and to the Constitution of India that we know right now because of that.
Okay. So thank you so much to all the panelists for answering these queries, because that is very important on the eve of independence, that we really need to address such questions regarding the constitutional framework or the judicial framework. And I am very happy that you all answered it in a very proficient manner, and we have successfully recorded your response. So thank you so much once again. But I would just like to put this question on floor for everyone who would like to take the mic to actually put forward the concluding remarks for this panel discussion. Is there anyone who would just like to conclude the whole panel discussion?
So I'll put forward certain closing remarks. And that will be in respect of the legal framework which we have today. We have advanced from being a religious laws which were merely a religious directives to what a codified law which we have in the country. India has our legal framework. We as lawyers have progressed from being wakils in the Mughal period to advocates from onwards the British periods. And but still in legal industry, we have seen a drastic change after the Britishers came and they introduced from the Macaulay time, Lord Macaulay time. We have seen certain codified laws, and the beauty lies there that when the codified laws were introduced, wherein actually they gave us the insight to what actually a codified law can have an impact on the society. And I think we are, I'll not use the word blessed because of obvious reasons, but I'll say that yes, we are fortunate enough to have those codified system intact, because they gave us a direction in which this country's legal system has, as we see today. For example, earlier we used to see sati pratha, we used to see dowry system. Now all these systems have been rigorously being dealt by the current legal framework. And there are certain laws which are continuing since the pre-independence era. We have our IPC from that era, we have the Contract Act from that era, we have the CRPC. Major laws are from that era, and they are so accurate and they're so illustrious that we never need to introduce any major change in them. But having said that, there are also certain drawbacks which we are carrying from the pre-independence era and to our present legal system. Which, for example, I have always fought for the animal rights, and you see the animal cruelty laws. They are all very pathetic, and they are being carried to date. The fines from that time are being carried to 2021. So there are certain changes which need to be introduced, and yes, I mean, there's always a scope of change after 75 years of what we are, 75 years of journey which we are into. And that can always be a better scenario in the future. So yes, looking forward for it.
Thank you so much, sir. So with this, we conclude this panel discussion over here. Thank you so much to each and every panelist.
Happy Independence Day to everyone, guys. And since the theme of this Independence Day has, of course, been with regard to the point legal aspect, and we have been discussing in this whole panel discussion with regard to the importance of amendments and what was the most important aspect in our constitution. So we had such a lovely discussion, and I'll just say a few points that, since the 75 years of independence, we have been having lots and lots of additions to the laws, which have been helping the, the legislative intent of the constitution to be in furtherance. All right. For example, we have lots of acts like prevention of harassment at workplace, POSCO, then dowry prohibition, and so many acts that had actually been talking about what ought to be done, and it is implemented in those lights of the constitution as well. And lately, in the last 10 years, and we have been having talks about privacy laws, technological laws, and these laws are something that are evolving, ever evolving, and it is great to observe the dynamism of these laws, maybe with regard to even touching some aspects of technology law, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and getting back, it is with regard to privacy, of course. So if that is infringed because of social media and so much of technology that is coming up, so it is on to the lawmakers and judiciary to actually check out all of those infringements and to just have a broader horizon. So talking about the Independence Day, I'll just conclude by this, that in our domains and with regard to our duties, we definitely must follow all of them and try to be a great citizen following all the duties. And that's all. Best of luck, guys, and happy Independence Day to everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. So now we're going to show some videos to you, like they have been sent by the students of law and engineering. So they have recorded the song, a particular patriotic song. So Takshima, can you please screen share and tell them, show them.
Yeah.
Right? So firstly, we have Hardik Rastogi, who is doing BA LLB honors from CPG College. He has sung the song Satyamev Jayate.
तेरा ऐसा चढ़ गया कोई और ना चढ़ सके, तेरा नाम सीने पे लिखा है कोई आगे बढ़ सके, है जुनून है तेरे इश्क का ये जुनून है, रग रग में इश्क तेरा दौड़ता ये बावरा सा खून है, तूने ही सिखाया सच्चाइयों का मतलब, तेरे पास आके जाना मेरी जिंदगी का मकसद, सत्य में मुझे दे सच्चा प्यार तेरा, सत्य में मुझे दे सत्य में मुझे दे सच्चा प्यार तेरा, सत्य में मुझे दे
Yes. So the next performance is by Atharv Bhatt. He's a singer and a songwriter, and he has completed his graduation in BBA from Amity University. And the song is
जीना 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 रे बड़ा गुलाल, माई तेरी चुनरिया लहराए, जीना जीना रे बड़ा गुलाल, माई तेरी चुनरिया लहराए, रंग तेरी रीत का, रंग तेरी प्रीत का, रंग तेरी जीत का है लाई लाई लाई, रंग तेरी रीत का, रंग तेरी प्रीत का, माई तेरी चुनरिया है लाई, जीना जीना री उड़ा गुलाल, माई तेरी चुनरिया लहराए। जग से हारा नहीं मैं, खुद से हारा हूँ माँ, एक दिन चमकूंगा लेकिन तेरा सितारा हूँ माँ, माई रे तेरे बिन मैं तो अधूरा रहा, माई रे मुझसे ही रूठी मेरी परछाई।
thank you so much to both of them for this lovely performances.
Such a soulful voice. So much. So nice.
Exactly my point. So I think we are done with this session now. We've actually celebrated Independence Day in a very positive and very good manner. And I think the students have sent in their videos a big hand for them, because that is these are such testing times that they actually took time for this and sent it to us. So with this, we wrap up our session. And once again, happy Independence Day to all of you.